We have big news. We have exciting news for you. Tell them what it is, Serena.
We are super excited to announce that we are starting our first membership this January 2024.
Yay! Membership.
So we're excited to let you know that we will be hosting a monthly membership where when you join, you will be
with us live in a Zoom room once a month for a workshop like we just hosted. It's going to be a workshop like that, one topic each month, a different topic. You might even help us come up with the following month's topic from inside our membership. Super excited to meet you. It was so fun meeting a few of you in our inaugural workshop. So we're really looking forward to that.
And when you are a member, you will also be receiving a monthly newsletter where I'm going to be a little more intimate and I'll be sharing the things that are working and the things that aren't working for me.
Yeah, like taking a tool that you've learned from the podcast and how you're implementing it and how well that worked, or maybe if it didn't work. And then Amma can put in my 2 bits worth. We'll see how that goes. But a membership newsletter and a membership live Zoom room workshop starting in January 2024. Can sign up through our Patreon link in the show notes, yeah?
Yes, everything will be in the show notes, and we can't wait to see you there, listeners.
We can't wait. Yay!
Welcome to the Nurturing Parent Podcast. And this week, I'm going to say hi to the dads as well because I've only been saying hi, mamas. And lately, we've seen that dads are listening. When we started this, I was really bent on making this a space for moms. But now I've seen that it's grown into something bigger, and I'm so grateful that we have you dads here listening as well. And we are even more excited to announce that this November 20th, we will be hosting a boundaries workshop. So if you're interested in joining us via Zoom, you can email us and in the subject, just put boundaries and we would be happy to send you the Zoom link. That will be November 20th at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time. It'll be a quick 30-minute workshop, and then if you can stay longer, we'd love to have you stay. And if you have any questions, we are more than happy to answer them. Again, that is November 20th at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time. You can email us. Our email is in the show notes, and in the subject, just put boundaries, and we will send you the Zoom link. Boundaries are very important, very necessary, but it's also a hard concept to grasp. We'd love to help moms work on it because they're very vital in maintaining healthy relationships. So we can't wait to see you there. And now to get into this week's conversation, we have an amazing guest join us. She is a wealth of knowledge. She really joins us with such high energy. We have the leader, the creator, the one that started it all, of the 1,000 Hours Outdoors movement, which is going to make you reconsider your time spent outside. We've learned that we should be spending 4 to 7 hours outside, but in reality, we're spending 4 to 7 minutes outside and 4 to 7 hours on screens. And if those aren't scary numbers to you, I also want to let you know that getting outside is what saved this mama's life. It had brought her from feeling like a failure and feeling overwhelmed to really being able to enjoy her parenting journey. If that sounds too complicated, it's really not. And Ginny Yurich is going to tell you in this week's episode and next week how you can accomplish this as well and all the benefits you and your children can reap. Are you ready?
Hey, Mama. Welcome to the Nurturing Parent Podcast. Do you want to end the constant battles for bath time? Do you find yourself emotionally exhausted at the end of the day? Do you wake up with big hopes for a smooth day of fun with your little ones, only to face an early morning meltdown because you peeled their banana the wrong way?
Silly you.
Silly you.
Hey, I'm Serena. I'm a mama of 2 little ones, and as a new mama, I constantly questioned myself. I wanted to make sure I was raising respectful kids while also building a strong bond with them. But I discovered that I had to unlearn my ideas that punishment was the way. With Lisa's encouragement, I've been practicing a respectful and gentle parenting approach, which is strengthening our bond as a family.
And hi, I'm Lisa. Amma means grandmother in Icelandic. I am a mama and an amma. And I have over 40 years of experience in childcare and parent coaching. And I am so excited to share the knowledge I've gained over these years with you.
Together in this podcast, each week we will explore some easy to implement skills you can add to your parenting tool belt to help you create a happy, thriving family.
I am super excited about our guest today because she is somebody that I have been following on social media for years. And her team approached us to be on our podcast. I was like, heck yes. Yes, please. Ginny is a homeschooling mama of five, I said 5 children, homeschooling, and is the founder of the global movement, 1,000 Hours Outside. And listeners, you know me, I am the Get Out in Nature Amma. So welcome, Ginny Yurich, and thank you so much for joining us on our show.
Oh, it's such an honor to be here. This is an interesting thing to have a team reaching out. That's so cool. That's Holly. Yeah. That's like a new thing for me. So it was cool to hear that. And have you ever sung your Daisy song to your listeners?
No, because I just started writing it today on my walk.
Do you sing to your listeners? Because I loved that song.
Oh, yes.
Oh, thank you. I don't very often. Well, that's not true. I do so nice. I sing all the time with children. So one of the songs that I was singing today, when a child is running and you need them to stop, it's really fun to do a game with a song that encourages them to stop when you say stop. So I sing running, 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 running very fast, running, 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 stop. And
they love that.
And then walking, walking, walk. And so it's a really fun way to encourage them to stop and go. And, you know, if you need them to slow down for some reason.
Aw. I think people want to hear the first bar of the Daisy song, though.
Okay. I don't even know if I can remember what I sang to, but I'll just make up a new one. The daisies big and small. And there are, what's the other one? Queen Anne's lace and all the pretty wildflowers along the roads.
Aw, it sounds like a CD I would buy for my kids. How beautiful.
Well, I just am going to share that I'm right now making a lullaby CD.
Aww.
And Ginny, you might appreciate that it's called Nature's Lullaby.
How beautiful. How perfect. I love that. Good for you.
Thank you. I'll send you that song when it's ready.
Yay.
It's all about being outside and getting sung to sleep when you're out in nature listening to nature's lullaby.
Love it.
Okay, so let's talk about you now. You, Ginny, are a thought leader in the world of nature-based play and its benefits for children. Can you share a bit about your background and what led you to be this voice for
Well, here's the funny thing. That's the bio that I wrote. So I think that was my husband's idea to put that in there, that I'm a thought leader. People like point that out. They'll be like, you're a thought leader? And I was like, well, all you have to do is like write it in front of your name.
Well, yeah,
that's what you are.
Brilliant.
You are. I mean, you have a big following on Instagram. You have a big following on Facebook, and you're reading books, and you've got a new book coming out, and you are really a voice for the importance of children getting back to nature.
Yes.
So you're a thought leader.
Yes.
I love it.
Thanks, Lisa. Self-proclaimed.
I've heard about 1,000 hours outside before I started my parenting journey. So I would like to think, because that was in the back of my head as I was raising my kids, is the time that I need to be outside with them and how important it is. So I would say you're a thought leader as well, Ginny.
Aw, thanks, Serena. Well, you know, when my kids were your age, Serena, I really struggled. 3 years are 3 and 1. So that was in the period of time where I was really underwater. And when we first had kids, I guess I didn't really know what to do with them. Like I thought we'd be on this schedule and I thought that it would be kind of rhythmic, and it just was not that. I think some kids maybe are more that way and some kids are just not, and ours were not at all. And so it's like it kind of hit me in the face. Like I was overwhelmed all the time and trying to make it through the day and trying to, meet all the needs of these kids. And I don't know, I just felt like every single day I was failing. And we would do these different programs, like the library program and the swim program and the music program, kind of like what everyone else did. It was a little expensive, it got to be. But more than that, it was just absolutely draining.
That's what I was going to say. Exhausting. Hello, Mama.
Draining. And trying to get one kid, two kids, three kids to any sort of program is like a circus feat. You're having to buckle them all in and climb over this chair and make sure you have all the things, and they all need changes of clothes and diapers and nursing and all of that, the food, the snacks, and then you have to do it all in reverse. So It's just a large feat to try and get kids out the door.
Even with one child, to go to all those activities, if they're on a day where they do not want to get in the car seat, thank you very much. I mean, good luck. It's so draining, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I remember it would be, 11 a.m. and I would be exhausted. Like I am completely done with this day and I still have so much more of it left. And so I really struggled actually for a good 3 years of being a mom and didn't really know what to do. And by happenstance, this isn't even anything remarkable. I had a friend at MOPS, which is Mothers of Preschoolers. It's another program I did because I did all these programs. And this girl sat at my table and she came in one day and she told me that she had been reading about Charlotte Mason. And I didn't know who Charlotte Mason was. And it turns out Charlotte Mason is from the 1800s, but she didn't tell me that. She did said, Charlotte Mason says that kids should be outside for 4 to 6 hours a day whenever the weather is tolerable. So there's a caveat. So people are up in arms because they live in sub-zero temperatures or it's 115 degrees where they live in the South or whatever it is. It's not for when you're absolutely miserable, but when the weather is tolerable. And I just remember thinking that was so absurd. I never heard of anything like that. No one was spending that amount of time outside. We weren't running into anyone outside. Everyone was doing 30 minutes and 45 minutes of this, and then they're exhausted and trying to make it through the rest of the day. So my life changed when I tried that. She asked me to try it with her. I remember thinking that the idea was really outlandish, and I did not think it was going to go well. I thought it was going to crash and burn, but I didn't say that because I wanted to have friends. So I showed up. And she said, listen, meet me at this park, and we're just going to have a picnic. Don't bring any toys. I was like, what are the kids going to do? Shouldn't I bring like Play-Doh and crafts and some stories and, all these different figurines? Shouldn't I bring all that? And she said, no, just bring your picnic blanket and your picnic. And so I thought, well, this is going to be the worst day ever. These kids are going to complain. They're going to be bored, because I've done Play-Doh and it lasts like 15 minutes and all these different things. So what ended up happening, though, I say it was the best day of my life because it was the first good day I had as a mom. I'd not had a good day up until that day. Okay, and then I had one.
Yes, I just want to take a deep breath and breathe that in. Like the first day that you had a good day as a mama. Mm-hmm. And your kids, the oldest was 3 or something?
Yeah, 3.
Wow. Mm-hmm. That's a statement right there. Tell us more about that.
It was a long time. It was a long time of being underwater. So what happened was we showed up at this park, and what I thought was going to crash and burn turned out to be this beautiful day. It was in September of 2011. This is a long time ago. Now my oldest is 15. So in 2011, we showed up at this park. I had a 3-year-old, a 1-year-old, and a baby. And my friends, same, maybe a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a baby. We each had 3 kids. And it was a park. So this is not a playground. There's no play set. There's no swings. It's grass. There's a creek, shallow creek that ran through with stones and ducks. And the kids just played. I can't even really tell you what they did. I don't know. But it was the first time that I could catch my breath and that I could have a full conversation. And we each held our babies. We had our picnic, so the older kids would run up and get some food and run back out and just run around. And I felt refreshed and I felt respite. And I just felt like a new person. And then 1 o'clock came and we all loaded up and to go home. And everyone fell asleep in the car, all 3 kids, which was like a miracle, just a miracle. So I drove around for a couple hours, like trying to soak that in. And all of a sudden it was 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock and just such a different type of a day, like where we were all fulfilled. And so we just immediately changed our lifestyle. And that was the really first impetus of 1,000 Hours Outside, though it would be 2 years before I really started to write about it. And I started to write about it because over those 2 years, I began to learn that when we take our kids outside, and when we go outside just in simple ways, this isn't like, hey, you've got to prepare a scavenger hunt for them, or hey, you've got to run some games, duck, duck, goose, Simon Says. This is like, hey, just go outside, go walk down the trail, walk your neighborhood, take your book outside. That when we go outside and we allow our kids to play freely in spaces that are safe, not by the road or something like that, it helps them to grow in every facet of their being. So this is helping them with their cognition. It's helping them obviously with their physical abilities, but in more ways than I ever knew. It's helping them socially. It's helping them emotionally. And so what we're doing is we're helping our children in this whole body sense in ways that have such longevity to them. The social skills that are going to last into adulthood, and these physical things that are also going to last into adulthood. And so over time, I thought I'm going to start to write about this because it was so monumental in my own life, my own mothering. It changed my whole thing. Like I was really drowning. And we went from just barely surviving to thriving in one day, 4 hours,
Wow.
changed the whole thing. And so I started writing about a decade ago, calling it 1,000 Hours Outside, based off of just some different pieces of research and off of our own experience, where we were aiming to get outside with this little nature group per Charlotte Mason's suggestion of 4 to 6 hours whenever the weather was tolerable. It added up to about 1,200 hours a year back then. And back then, that was the amount of time kids were on screens on average in America. And so I just thought, wow, like we would have missed out on a lot of life if those 1,200 hours would have gone to screens. And they say that kids are on screens for 4 to 7 hours on average, but only outside playing freely for 4 to 7 minutes on average each day. So we just have this really big disparity. It's showing up in a lot of ways. And getting outside and being intentional about it can change our whole motherhood experience, our whole parenting experience, and also the lives of our children.
Absolutely incredible.
Yeah. And when you say that you felt like you were underwater those first 3 years, I was home with my first for the first 2 years, and I felt that because we weren't on a schedule, and so our days were loose and dragging, and getting outside really just it helps in so many ways, but sometimes it's so hard. I'm so happy that you had that friend to give you that positive pressure and drag you to a picnic without any toys or any Play-Doh so that you can experience that.
Just got this idea that our listeners should reach out to people in their neighborhood, in their area, and say, let's be outside mamas together and have a buddy.
That's all you need. I do think you need someone else, though. And I think the reason that you do is partially because what you were saying, Serena, for the positive pressure, but also for the sake of the kids. I think that that's what entices them to go out. And people will say, well, my kids don't want to go outside. What's your advice? And I would say the same thing. Guess what? My kids don't want to go outside either. And also neither do I. Because we want to sort of stay put. We want to, that's like inertia, right? Like a body in motion stays in motion, but a body that's sitting, I mean, there you are, you're stuck. You don't want to go. It is a lot of work, especially when your kids are small. You've got to pack the food and you've got to pack the diaper bag. You usually have an extra set of clothes. You have to have the first aid kit, the stroller. So it is a fair amount of work. But once you get there, then you get this expansive time. And because you're connecting with someone else, it changes the whole thing. The kids play better because they have a playmate there, and then you get to have a conversation, and also there's an extra set of eyes. So I don't think that I would have ever been able to make that big of a change in our life and to get that much time outside if it had not been for this small group of friends that I did it with.
Beautiful. The other thing that really struck me with your beautiful story, I'm so moved. I'm so moved by your story, Ginny. Like that one day you see it as the massive pivot for your life as a mama, as a human being. I'm so moved by it. And what it really brought up for me was when I first started, I'm called the singing Amma being grandmother. And I started a Facebook page for the singing Amma, and it's all my parenting kinds of things, and one day I went for a walk in the forest through some trails with my then 2-year-old grandson, and he's climbing logs and jumping streams and splashing in the stream and picking up rocks and throwing them and doing all this stuff. And so I just off my phone, I posted like 4 pictures of him doing these different things. And I said, I wrote some poem just off the top of my head. I am a little child. I love to run and play. I am a little child. I like to be outside every day. And I forget the rest of the poem, but I just posted it. Poof, there it goes. Then I had a woman from Iceland who I had never met, who I subsequently did meet. And she wrote to me and said, it's so refreshing to find a green Amma. And I didn't know, the reason I'm telling that story is I didn't know that what I was doing was so cool. Like, it was just my life. This is what I do. We go outside and we play. And so what I'm moved by your story is it's just so natural for me that I don't even realize that it's something special. And so it inspires me to realize that more.
And it's not really what people are doing. That's actually why I started writing. So we lived for about 2 years where we were spending 3 days or so a week with this little nature group, and we try and go for 4 to 6 hours. And then that prompted us to spend more time outside on the weekends too, because I think when you have young kids, if you're married or you have a partner, you have a hard time connecting. And that can be really tricky too, because the kids always have needs. But if you go outside, sometimes you can have a little bit more chance for 5-minute conversation or 10-minute conversation because the kids are engaged in different things. And so we spent this significant amount of time outdoors. And over the course of 2 years, now we live in the Metro Detroit area, so it's very populated. There was not one other kid that we ran into. No kids on the trails. It was only grandparents. And so it is something that I didn't realize that it had benefits. I had no idea. I thought it was like the thing that you do if you have a little bit of leftover time. But no, this is really the foundation upon which our kids build their lives, is all of this free play and all of this time being creative and developing resilience and learning how to risk and learning what their bodies can and can't do. So I had no idea. I mean, in time, I have read, I can't even tell you, stacks and stacks and stacks of books that talk about the benefits of getting our kids outside and how it can really set them up for success for a lifetime.
I love how you mentioned about how getting outside can help you connect with your partner as well, because when we are inside, I find myself trying to scramble around the house and just try to do chores because we're inside and we're inside all together, but we're not really together. And we can be outside and not really together, but be more together than we are inside.
And the same with your kids, right, too, Serena?
Yep.
Where
exactly.
If we're inside, I think a lot of times there's a chance to be really irritated because we're inside and we're dealing with these kids and they're making a mess and we're trying to clean it up. And that's how I felt, like floundering, like I'm always failing. I'm never getting to what I get to. And then they want you to read them a story, but that kid wants to read a different story. And there's all these things going on. But when you step outside, you really can connect more because everyone's a little bit more present. Everyone's a little more happy. And kids can find, they can go off on their own a little bit. They can find their own space or whatever that is. So it definitely helps with connections with kids too.
Yes, I'd agree. So you have a new book coming out called Until the Streetlights Come On, which is so nostalgic for me. Just hearing that title makes me think about running home, running down the block as soon as the streetlights come on so I can get home in time for dinner. So this comes from the idea of generations of kids who were able to play outside and unsupervised without structure. Like I was able to run down the block and play at the park without my parents having to be there. But now it's different, and I feel guilty because I don't know if I can provide that childhood experience for my kids, which I would love for them. So what's happening in our culture that's causing this shift?
It's a big shift, isn't it? It's an interesting thing because we're aiming to be outside each year for 1,000 hours. We have a little chart, we keep track of it. And it is this really simple premise, but has had a profound impact on the last 12 years of our lives. And when I look back, I see a society that protected childhood. And I don't know if that was on purpose or if it was just, I think maybe it was just happenstance, right? It was like there were already structures built in that protected that open space of childhood. And so it looked like the cartoons turning off at noon on Saturday morning and there being no more TV to watch until Monday afternoon. There was nothing else. And so you had to go find something to do. And I have distinct memories of Sundays of wanting to watch television like on a Sunday afternoon, and there wasn't an option. And so I had to go find something to do because I didn't want to watch, WWF. That was the only option. So you have to find something to do. And when you have to go find something to do, then the other kids see you finding something to do and they want to join in. And so we've lost that. Mike Lanza has a book called Playborhood, where he says, when a kid looks out the window these days, there's nothing that entices them out. There's no other kids running around building things and being creative. There's no one out there. And so then they look at their screen and they're like, well, this is way better than any other option. So that's the big change. My father-in-law grew up in a neighborhood where he said there was something like, 72 kids within the first 6 houses on either side of the street. And so kids were running amok. And I think when you have a lot of kids out there, there's a little bit of safety in numbers. There's eyes, there's older kids and younger kids. And so that is something that we don't have anymore. And I have grieved that. I used to think that I got gypped, basically. I used to think, well, goodness, if I could just send these kids out the door to go play with the neighborhood kids, I could get all these chores done. But what I think now is that, especially after I've spent 10,000 hours, 12,000 hours outside in the last decade plus, is that this technological age that we're living in, it affects us as adults too. So I also need it. Maybe the moms in the 80s didn't need it as much, or maybe they did. I don't know. But there wasn't as much screens for everyone. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Everybody, we need it. We still need it. Everybody needs
it. You need nature time, but there's less screen pervasiveness back when I was growing up and in decades past. And so I'm actually thankful. I'm thankful that I'm pushed as well. And so what it looks like for me, Serena, because I'm around. It's not really kind of like how it was where you're just sending your kid down to the park. I think you can do that. The little group of neighborhood kids goes or whatever. But this looks like, we're getting 2 or 3 families together on a somewhat regular basis, and we're meeting up locally at different spots. And the moms are sitting around talking or reading, having a cup of tea, whatever. And the kids are roaming in these spaces where, you're at a big park or there's a lot of space for them to go, or the older kids can walk the trail by themselves or something like that. So they're still getting a lot of that independence, but we're kind of there with them. That's just how it looks for us. I don't think it has to look the same for everyone, but that's how it looks for us. And I tell you what, I've had a real good life. This has been awesome. I'm actually glad in retrospect that I didn't spend all that time inside cleaning or what. Like, I had a friend growing up, the neighbors across the street, they had 4 kids and they would lock all the kids out during the summer. And so I used to think, well, what a life for that mom, But now I'm like, you know what? No way. I'm so glad I've gotten to be there and I've gotten to go to all these beautiful places and been outside in all these different types of weather. So it's a good life for everyone.
So I remember being a child, and I'm quite a bit older than either of you. I was a child through the 60s, born in 61. So 71, I was 10 years old. So in the 60s, we lived at one point we lived on a farm, and there were 3 other kids that lived on the farm and 5 kids that lived across the street. So we were a gaggle, and we just had a farm to run on. And then the other part of those years that I recall, when I was old enough to have memories, we lived on a university endowment lands. So there was a lot of student housing where we lived. So every house had kids in it. And behind our little house that we lived in, they were actually old army huts, funnily. And there was a row up our side, and behind us was a big grassy area. And so, typically you'd get home from school, which you would walk or ride your bike, and get home from school, and you would grab a quick snack if you were starving, like I always was at the end of a school day, and you'd get outside, and you would stay outside until, like your book says, darkness came, or till the street lights came on. I don't remember the street lights particularly, but the darkness would be coming, and it was like, oh, I guess it's time to go home. And and we had little woods beside us, and I think safety in numbers was part of the thing, right? We would all go play in the woods. We'd make believe housing, and where we all lived and all the things. And there was a couple of playgrounds in our area too. We would ride our bikes all over the place, like all over the place. one thing I remember, because I know for a lot of parents, there's some concern or big concern about safety. And in those days, we all rode our bikes, grade 1 all the way up. And it wasn't super close. It was a good long bike ride.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, there would be announcements every now and then. I remember 3 or 4 in the 4 years I went to that school. And at the end of the day, they would say, there's a bad man in the woods, so make sure you go home with a friend, take a buddy,
Wow.
walk or ride your bike with a buddy. And, they
Wow.
did. Yeah. And so that's what we would do. We would just make sure we had somebody or 2 or 3 friends to go home with. And
Mm-hmm.
that was fine. It was like it worked out. And I don't remember anybody being taken and snatched,
Mm-hmm.
because we would get those notices. But that today, today's parents would be like, there's no way my child would be riding their bike to that school. So that
Mm-hmm.
I know is one of the big concerns that we've
Mm-hmm.
somehow shifted to, even in the last 40 years, like you say, so what can we do to help parents feel safe and create a safe way of being outside? You've talked already about your friends that meet up and you go
Mm-hmm.
together to a big park area. So,
Yeah, that's been how we've dealt with it. There are some other ways. I think it depends on where you live, and people talk about knowing your neighbors and that type of thing. But the safety in numbers is a big deal. As technology grows and changes, there are technological answers to it as well. Like there's companies that make smartwatches for kids. Like there's one called Cosmo. They make a GPS watch for kids. So that kid could hit an emergency button on their watch, even if it was just something like someone fell and broke their arm or something happened. So just for safety in that aspect, but also for the sort of stranger danger. There's a book by Lenore Skenazy called Free Range Kids, and she dives deep into the fact that these stories have happened, but they've been really hounded through the media and they've incited a lot of fear when really they're fairly rare. And she goes through the data and talks about actually kids are more safe than they have ever been. And it's not maybe as big of a fear as, like she would say something like, if you're that afraid, then you shouldn't be driving your kids in a car either. Because statistically speaking, that's actually a whole lot more dangerous than letting your 8 or 9-year-old go up to the neighborhood park by themselves. So I do think that parenting is it should be this gradual path of letting go. And so if you go outside with your young kids, like Serena, they're 1 and 3, you start to learn what they can and can't do. You start to learn their personalities, and they're learning how to sort of move away from you and to grow and to challenge themselves. And we're learning as a parent how to let that happen. Because it is scary. But the natural progression is that when they're really little, they're close to the ground. And so if they climb up on a stump and they fall off, that's not that big of a fall. They might have a bump, they might have a bruise, you might need a Band-Aid. And so then it's this gradual sort of pulling apart. And so if you spend a lot of time with your kids, you have a good sense of what they're capable of and what they could do with a friend. So there's some workarounds, and I also think it works to go along too if you can possibly do that, to schedule it in. And if you feel really afraid, then go and sit on the sidelines, but don't butt in. Take a crochet kit or take a book. Talk to a friend, because kids really need time away from adult eyes in order to try the things that they really want to try. And so that could mean just sitting back. That could be sitting on the sideline, sitting on a park bench over on the side, and just kind of letting the play unfold. And kids get so much benefit out of that.
I love that. The freedom of play is a big part of what you talk about, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
We play.
Well, because kids have to make their own decisions, and I think that's a big part of it. One of the things that a lot of these occupational therapists are talking about is that the child's body drives them on. So when our kids, if they're a neurotypical kid and they're learning how to crawl, they're learning how to walk, we don't teach them that. We don't say, okay, now move your right arm with your left leg. Like, no, their bodies drive them on, and they learn those skills at mastery level. And then they do something harder. And I think we swoop in when they're so young to start to teach them things that we forget that this is how their bodies work and would work all the way throughout their entire life if they have the time and the space. So, for example, now we have teenagers And our teenagers are doing things like skateboarding, or they're shooting basketball hoops. They're trying to make trick shots, they call them. They're learning how to dive. They're learning how to do all these different types of things that challenge their bodies. And when we challenge our bodies, the neural wiring in our brain gets faster and we have these more robust connections. So our brains work better. So we have to be able to take a step back and to let our kids work through social situations. We have to let them learn what their bodies can and can't do, because that makes them safer in the long run.
Yeah, I love it. I love the observing the child and seeing what your child is ready to do or what they're interested in. One of the things I adore is, any toddler up to preschooler, up to early years in school ages, if you take them for a walk, they will find something to climb onto and balance. They are constantly doing the balancing thing. If it's the side of the curb, if it's a log on a beach, whatever it is, they're balancing. And that's exactly what they're doing. They're not just practicing their physical and gaining their physical, but like you say, it's the neurotransmitters in the brain.
Yes. Yes, it's helping their brains grow. And all those things that you've seen, you have kids in your home and you've raised kids and you're a grandma. It's like all these things that you see that kids do. Like one of the things that they do is they jump off of things and they land. So our kids, they jump off the curb, then they jump off the fallen tree and they go higher and higher. They go up on the hay bale, they jump and they land, they jump and they land. Well, what happens when they do that is that shock from hitting the ground that helps build their bone structure. So there's a woman named Katie Bowman who's a biomechanist. She's written all these great books. And she says osteoporosis is a childhood disease that shows up in adulthood. Because what's happening is we're not giving our kids those opportunities to do that. But what's interesting is it's innate. No one has to tell the child, will you climb up there and jump off in order to build your skeletal system? They just do it on their own. So they have this innate drive. And I think that's one of the biggest things that we've forgotten. I think it's well-intentioned, but we step in too much. We direct too much. We think we know, but really what this Angela Hanscom says, she wrote Balanced and Barefoot, she says their neurological system knows. Their bodies drive them on to that next little thing. What's the next little thing that I need to learn in order to master this skill? And then I'm going to try something harder.
That's beautiful. To me, that really speaks to trusting the process, allowing our child and children to grow and trusting that they're innate inside their bodies. They're not thinking about how should I increase my balance or my bone structure. They're just doing what their bodies are designed to do. I always say we are mammals and our babies know how they need to grow to be safe and secure and healthy throughout their life. We need to let them.
They sure do. I mean, even something as simple as spinning. So this is something that kids do, right? So they like to do somersaults. They like to do cartwheels. They like to roll down the hill and they're spinning going down. These are things that they do all on their own. And our brains have what's called it's our bodies. It's called the vestibular sense. So it's one of our senses, right? We have sight and smell and taste and all those ones, but there's other ones too. And the vestibular sense is what they call a foundational sense. All the other senses are built upon it. They have to be integrated in order for you to learn. And the way that the vestibular sense is activated and developed is by getting your head out of an upright position. And so this is like what kids do. They do those wheelbarrow races and they roll and they roughhouse and they swing and they throw their head back. In all of these things, they're activating and developing this vestibular sense in a way that's going to help integrate all the other senses so that they can learn in an optimal way. And no one has to tell them to do those things. In fact, I think we're trying to tell them to stop those things. I mean, that tends to be the way of the adult, which is stop spinning. You're going to get dizzy. You're going to get hurt. We've taken the merry-go-rounds out of the playgrounds, all these different things. But when we step back and trust, I think that's the perfect word, Lisa. Like we trust their bodies. We trust them to know, then they go really far.
Beautiful. Love now that the brain science and you are pointing to that so much right now, because there's been such, for I don't know how many decades, 2 or 3, I don't know, 4, where parents want their child in the best possible preschool so they can get into the best school, so they can get into the best universities. And I'm like, seriously, this is a 3-year-old. And it's scary to me. because
Well, it's just misguided. And I think that's the saddest part of it. It's wrong. It's just we're going down the wrong path. We've doubled down on these old ways and they don't work anymore. And maybe they worked for, but school used to be different. Teachers were autonomous. When I was growing up, teachers had autonomy in their classrooms and they don't anymore. So I taught in the public schools. It was like every single algebra class has to look exactly the same. Every single second grade class has to look exactly the same. And so teachers lost that push and pull and their ability to adjust to the kids in their classroom. It all has to be the same. But we were preparing kids for jobs that lasted for a lifetime. That's how jobs used to be. You start work at 22, you end when you're 52 or 25 to 55. You have one set of coworkers and you work your way through. Well, they say kids today, they're going to have 4 different jobs on average, right out of college or end of high school, that first decade of working, they're going to have 4 different jobs. So that's 4 different sets of coworkers, 4 different sets of environments to learn the new things. We have to have kids that are adaptable and are resilient and gritty and creative. And all those things do not come from sitting at a desk. Like we have the desk time down. In fact, when I was talking to this Angela Hanscom who wrote Balanced and Barefoot, she said 9 hours a day is the average amount of time kids are sitting at a desk. 9 hours sitting, maybe not at a desk, just sitting, 9 hours a day of sitting. Like that's enough. It's too much. So we're doing the wrong things. I think if you want to prepare your kids to get into a good college or to have a good career, they've got to be the ones that can ask good questions and that can create something out of nothing, that can make good decisions. Because these college professors, I just talked to one named Dr. Jean Twangy, who studies generational changes. And she's out in California. And she said, these kids are coming now, this is recent, into college. And she said they can't even make simple decisions without texting their parents. It's really showing up in adult life.
Yeah, that's been my concern for a while. How is these next generations actually even going to survive, let alone step into solid, powerful leadership, on whatever level, in their family, in their community, in the world, in the country, in the world, whatever. And just being not even leadership, but just being a secure adult being who knows their place in the world and knows that they're making a great difference in the world, like all the things that we wish for our children. So I love this information that you're bringing to us, Ginny, that really points to, it's not just fun that we're talking about going outside. It's fun. It's wonderful. It's, our children get to be expressive. They get to be creative in what they're learning and discovering. It gives us freedom and that moment to take those breaths and to be with your partner or your girlfriends or whatever. And it's setting them up for that resilience and that success in their adult future lives. And then the physical part, like, jumping off a log is helping build their bone structure. Come on, this is amazing. It's just all there.
Yeah, it's simplicity, but it really makes such a huge difference.
All right, so we're going to put a pause right here until next week. When we finish off this episode, I'll share my gems as always, and we're going to celebrate Ginny's book release. But if you're dying to get your hands on this book, you can pre-order it right now. So Ginny's going to tell us how, and it comes with some amazing bonuses. Ginny's going to share all of that, but it will also be in the show notes. So check out the show notes for all the links, and it will take you right there.
Till the Streetlights Come On is available wherever people buy their books, but through our publisher, bakerbookhouse.com, they can, if you pre-order it, or even if you order it after, it's significantly reduced in price. I think it's 40% off for pre-order and maybe 30% off after that. So 40% off plus free shipping. So it's quite a bit of a discount. So people can get that though wherever they buy their books, and I'm excited about it. It's got a beautiful cover, and I hope that it brings hope to the reader.
Nice.
I'm really excited. I'm so excited. And it's coming out when this podcast airs. It's coming out next week.
Aw, thank you. How exciting. Okay, so if it is, and people know, there are pre-order bonuses. This is how everyone does it now. So the pre-order bonuses include 4 things: the audiobook, a digital, it's so cool. It's an outdoor cooking with kids cookbook. So we sell that on our website, I think for $12. You get that for free. You get the audiobook for free. You get an exclusive 1,000 hours outside tracker. So it's only going to be available for people who pre-order the book. And there's a little bit of video content that comes as well. So that's kind of fun.
All right, Ginny's underplaying it because that doesn't sound kind of fun. That sounds pretty awesome. Thank you so much for all the work you do. Thank you for inspiring us. Thank you for joining us on the show. And thank you, mamas, for being here. We hope to see you next week in honor of Ginny's book release. We'll finish off this episode, and I hope you go out and grab your copy. All right, take care, mamas and daddies.